Well, now this is interesting. My name, by the way, is Mary Jones. I have a talk show on 4 stations in Connecticut, do it out of WDRC in Hartford. But this is a peculiar circumstance for me. I spend my life when I'm doing my show right in front of a microphone like this, but it's normally working. So I can normally tell that it's on. So this is very peculiar, but it is so nice to be with you tonight. We are being filmed tonight, by the way, so you're all going to be seen and heard into the future. And I am so pleased to be here for our Dine for Success event brought to us by your university, Quinnipiac University, and Dine for Success. I would like to thank Steve Harvey and his partner, who is not here tonight, Sue Carlo. They are the owners and founders of Job Tutors, which created Dine for Success and created these events. So, Steve, thank you so much for pulling us together. And again, I'm pleased to be here tonight. I had been, before getting into radio, and I've been in radio for about 10 years, I owned a corporate recruiting firm for about 20 years in Connecticut, which is how Steve and I first met many years ago. So having the chance to come back to a college campus and do anything and everything related to career development and just looking into your future and giving you some tips to improve that future, I am just thrilled to be able to do. So again, it's just nice for me here to be here today. We have some alumni with us that I would like to introduce. They are going to be speaking and sharing some insights from their successful career experiences with you a little later, but I do want to introduce them. Some of you are sitting with alums at your table. Laura Macaluso, where is Laura? There you are, Laura. Thank you so much for coming. Ray Delgado. Thank you very much, Ray. Mike Deudo. How did I do with that last name? All right. And James Greenwood. Is James here? I did not have a chance to meet James earlier. He may not be here. But thank you, alums. And again, they are going to be speaking with us later. We are going to be sharing, and this is the fun part, we are going to be helping you, sharing tips in different facets of your life, different aspects of your life, in terms of etiquette, in terms of fashion and your overall image, in terms of your career development, and all of those things are going to enable you to lead lives that are successful, fulfilled, and happy. So this is important stuff that our experts tonight are going to be sharing. One of the only thing that we're not going to be getting into, which is one of my favorite subjects, is your love life. We're not going to be able to help you with that tonight, but everything else we're going to take a stab at. One of the things that I like to insert into every event that I go to and talk a lot about on my show is the importance of a positive attitude. And I suggest that if you are not aware of this, and hopefully you are, hopefully you know how darn important what we think is in terms of creating the outcome of our lives. If we think, and this has been proven going back hundreds and hundreds of years, there is research that proves that if we think and when we think positively, when we expect the most out of situations, when we expect the most out of our lives, that is exactly what you're going to get. So I would just like to start the evening off with hopefully a little reminder, because I hope this is not the first time that you're hearing this. Very simply, and I'm a real fan of simplicity. As I've gone through my life, I've discovered that I have an easier time remembering things that are simple. They just resonate with me longer. So I'm going to give you 3 words that I would suggest you think of tonight and just ponder as you begin your careers and graduate from this terrific university. Thoughts become things. If you think positive thoughts, your life will be surrounded and filled with positive things. Conversely, if you are an overly critical person, judgmental person, assuming things are going to be negative, you will find that often they will be. The exciting thing of that is not only that is true and it's relatively simple, but that you have 100% control over that. 100% control. So remember, thoughts become things. I would like to introduce our host tonight, Steve Harvey, who again has been in the corporate recruiting industry for many, many years. He and his partner, Sue Carlo, started Job Tutors, their website. Do make sure you check it out if you haven't yet, jobtutors.net. Job Tutors is all about helping people at the beginning of their careers, whether they be freshmen in college or just graduating from their graduate degrees, helping them really understand and get on and succeed in their career development. Before we even, Steve, I'd like to ask you to come up here, but could I understand we have freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors here. Please raise your hand if you're a freshman, just to get a feel. Good for you guys. That is wonderful. Wonderful. Sophomores. A few sophomores. Wonderful. Juniors. Many juniors. Oh, I love seeing that. And seniors. Excellent. All right. So we have all 4 years represented. I think that's wonderful. Would this be James, who just walked in by any chance? Exactly. That's right. I know. I was going to point that out to you, and I'm not even the etiquette expert, but I was going to point that out to you. I just introduced the alum, and thank you for coming. And you know that you're going to be saying a few words a little later, but just wanted to introduce you. Now you can sit down, by the way. Okay, fine. Steve Harvey, please come up to the podium again. Steve Harvey is our host for the evening.
First of all, thank you very much, Mary. As Mary mentioned, we've known each other for a long time. We were actually competitors in the recruiting business for a while, which was interesting. And then when you're a competitor and then you become friends with somebody, it really adds to the value of the relationship, I think, down the road. Mary mentioned something about being positive. And I have found that if you want to be positive, you have to do it all of the time. There's 3, Mary, Debbie, and Kelly are 3 women that have decided on a path for their careers, have kind of reached out and done some pretty amazing things. So the things you're going to hear from them tonight, please take it to heart. Mary mentioned that I've been in recruiting. I've been in executive recruiting for 22 plus years, and I've placed 475 people, something like that. So I understand both sides of the industry. And one of the key things, tonight is an all-encompassing event. We're going to talk a little bit about careers. We're going to talk about fashion, because when you finally get in front of that client, you really want to make sure you look good, because if not, you're going to get bounced. And then we're going to talk about etiquette, because the worst thing you can do is go through the entire interview process and stand out. Most companies or most people that are going to hire you are going to want to get you outside of the office and see you at a lunch or a dinner setting. And trust me, it's the easiest place to screw up. And that's what you don't want to do. So take advice from the people that are experts in the field tonight. What I'm going to talk about initially this evening is networking. If you noticed, and this was Jill's idea, which I thought was great, color code and throw everybody's name into a hopper so that you can't sit with your friends. Now, if you're sitting next to a friend, it was just a luck of the draw. We purposely wanted you to be sitting with people that you don't know. 80% of you, I actually think that's a Wall Street Journal statistic. I actually believe it's closer to 90% of you are going to find your first job through networking, not by Monster or Career Builder or whoever it may be. The reason why I say that is because from my own experiences and experiences that we've worked with in the past, that's the way it happens. One of the keys to networking is courtesy. And I'm going to interject a lot of tips through this thing because I'm not going to bore you with statistics. But the first way when you introduce yourself to someone, especially if you're calling them because you want to take their time, and time is extremely valuable, is to ask them if it's a good time to talk. Common courtesy. One of the key things when I'm talking to executives is that they tell us is that kids that are coming out of school, by the way, kids are anybody that's younger than me, so don't get offended by kids. Okay, the gray hair gives me that right to do that. You really have to understand the entire networking process, and we're going to start with the first first people you need to expound upon is your family. Most people forget that's the fastest way to get a networking tie-in. I interviewed a couple of people today, and one of them was kiddingly saying, "Oh, well, my mom is helping me, get introduced to this person." Good for you. The easier, the better. When I was in high school, I lived in the Bronx. I needed a job. I went to my grandfather. He was a bartender. He got me a job with a company called White Rock, which is a soda company. And I unloaded trucks in Harlem all summer. Built up my muscles, and I made a lot of good money. That was my first job. When I came home from college my freshman year, I wanted to build up again. I went to my uncle who worked in the trucking industry. He got me a job at the end of Brooklyn, loading trucks at night. Great experience, especially if you want to ride the subways all night long. That was the second experience. The third one, when I graduated from college, I went to my future brother-in-law and said, I really want to get married soon and I really need a job. And about a week later, I was working for his company. So 3 specific examples of utilizing your family. I want to take that to the next level. Family is everybody that you know. So you talk to your parents' bosses. You talk to your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, because you never know if you've got a distant cousin who got married and that person's father is the president of a company. If you're alienated from part of your family, reach out to them. There's a very unique young lady that I met who wasn't too tied into half of her family. So as a great idea, she sent out an email saying, I'm graduating from Quinnipiac, and I wanted to let you know, and I'm also going to be looking for a job. Using that creative idea, she found out about some people in her family, and then friends of theirs, who hooked her up to go on a couple of interviews. Now that's using your noodle, and that's what you really need to do. I don't like the phrase, get out of the box, but you have to think creatively. So you go to all of your family members and reach out to them and specifically find people that are in the field of interest that you have. My partner, who's not here tonight, by the way, she's a smart one. She's in Florida right now. She was at a funeral. She was talking to the person next to her. They started going back and forth. Her son graduated from Bentley. He's on the West Coast. He wants to come back to the East Coast. He's in investments. This guy owns an investment firm in Hartford. 3 days later, he had a phone interview. So the thing for networking, I want you to remember 2 things. One is, who do you know? Now, all of you people that are sitting at this table, okay, have a great opportunity because of that lady right there. Okay? And if you don't get to know her by the end of the night, then you've wasted your evening. And it's the same thing with the rest of the people that have alums at your table. The other thing is, you never know. Now, there's 4 alum here tonight. I spoke to all 4 of them within the last 2 days. I did not go to Quinnipiac. I had direct knowledge or contact with 2 of them. What are the odds of that? Pretty slim? You never know. I placed her earlier in her career. Okay? Another gentleman is an ex-tax partner at Price Waterhouse. Well, earlier in my career, I did a lot of work with Price Waterhouse. So I said, did you work in the Hartford office? And he went, yes, I did. I was like, wow, did you know Bob Mahoney, who I used to place a lot of people with? And guess what? He knew Bob really well. And then he mentioned, well, do you know Brian, who was Bob's boss? So you never know who you're going to be sitting next to that you could create a contact with. And that's the point that I'm trying to make. Your friends, if they're not in your major, okay, what does that mean? If you're in marketing and he's in accounting, then you can tap into his market because you really don't want to compete in the same fields. But find out what your roommates' parents do and what their network is, and then expand from there. Those are people that you know. It's easier. The next thing, which is extremely important, is your college professors and the alumni. You need to use and abuse your professors in a good way because they have a lot of contacts that can open up doors for you. But if you don't talk to your professors, you're not going to be able to utilize the skills and the network that they have. Join your alumni association. Seniors, freshmen don't do that. But the seniors, get involved right away. And I'll give you an example why. By being in the alumni association, you can find out, first of all, people know who you are, and there's a network there. I have found people that graduated from this school really like this place. My daughter-in-law graduated from here. She can't wait to come back for her master's. And she's always talking about it to everybody that we know. So I'll give you a specific example of how to use family and your school. My niece graduated, she was going to school in Pennsylvania. She was a junior. She called up, Uncle Steve, I need help. Now, she lives near Middletown, New York, and I know there's a couple of you from here, from that area. And she has a dual major in finance and economics. She's a pretty smart kid. Gee, Uncle Steve, I really need some help. I want an internship in New York, blah, blah, blah. So I said, well, have you talked to your bigger donors at your school? No. Have you reached out and talked to any of the major alums at your school that are in financial services that you really want to get into? Oh, no. I said, well, that's the first thing that you need to do. So I said, you go to your alumni association and start finding out who those people are. So what did she do? Well, she listened to me. She was smart, at least that way. She went out, found out one of the top donors to her school owns a mid-size financial services investment firm in New York City on Wall Street. She applied for an internship during her junior year, summer of junior year. She had a full-time offer before she went back to school in her senior year. You can all do that, but you got to start working on it when you're sophomores and juniors. That's the ideal. Can you imagine being a senior right now and knowing that when you graduate on the 16th, after you take a week off, you can start and you don't have to worry about the rat race that normally goes through with everybody else? So think about that. Another example of you never know. Somebody asked us to help out a friend of theirs who is not a student, older, he's about 33 years old, who's making a career change. Very difficult time right now to make a career change. We made the recommendation of him telling us what he really wanted to do. He wanted to get into fundraising, which is really vastly different from what he had done in the past. So what school did you go to? Oh, well, we went to Bates. So my partner, who is a research wizard, went online and found that there was a person in fund development at Yale University who went to Bates. So we recommended that he reach out and talk to her. We also found out that there was an opening in the fund department there. And when he reached out to her, he found out that she was being promoted. So they met for coffee. She liked him so much, even though he had no fund experience, she recommended him for the position. He got the job. So you need to reach out to the people that are in the field that you want to get into. It's extremely important. Now, the other thing is associations. If you don't belong to LinkedIn and you're in the business school, then do it tonight. I told that to one person that I did a mock interview with today. Do it today. And then go to the 10 companies that you really want to work for and start finding out who are in LinkedIn. Join the groups that they're in and start getting into conversation with them. It's a great way to start laying the foundation for doing informational interviews with these people, because informational interviews will generally turn into a job offer. A young lady that went through our program, she went on 6 informational interviews. 2 of them turned into job offers. There was no position. She created them herself. You can all do that. The last thing on joining associations, if you're in marketing, join the American Marketing Association for a couple of reasons. One, it gives you great exposure. As a student, you get a student discount, save money. More importantly, you get a list of all of the people that are there, and that's the list that you utilize when you reach out for your informational interviews. Now, a couple of tips. If you go to a networking event, have a goal. Know exactly what you want to accomplish. My goal is to get 25 new business cards and make 25 new contacts, because each one of those should turn into 3 more contacts so that you've got 75 contacts. When you meet somebody at an event, if you know how to mimic someone, this is not making fun of them, okay, but read them. As you can tell, I'm demonstrative. Okay, if you talk to me like this, I'm probably not going to like you as much. Okay, so you try to, parrot how that person is reacting. Another thing, when you meet somebody, you should always have these ready. There's a reason why people have these. When you hand them out, first of all, they should always be pointing up so that the person can read them. As we wrap up later, I'm going to show you the X closing, which will show you how to actually use this thing. It should be a good card. Every one of you in the business school should have one, even freshmen. Why? Because you never know who you're going to meet. What if you're sitting on a plane? Do you think they're going to remember you if you don't give them a card? Ain't going to happen. So that's what you want to do. The other thing, favorably respond to a card when somebody gives it to you. Even if it's just like, hey, that's a pretty cool flag. I like that. It shows that you're paying attention when they've offered you something. Extremely important. Learn to network every day. It's extremely important. And we'll talk a little bit that more, and if you have questions, you can ask me later. Whenever you meet somebody, ask them to give you 2 or 3 other names. That's how you build your network. Trust me, most people, the alums, myself, anybody who's kind of got this color hair, at some point somebody helped us, and they like when younger, enthusiastic, passionate kids coming out of school say, hey, can you help me out? Can you talk to me about your industry a little bit? Don't think that they're unapproachable. Most of them really want to reach out and help you because somewhere back in the day, if that's the expression, somebody did it for us. And most of us want to give back. And that's extremely important. By the way, networking is giving back. So if I do you a favor, at some point down the road, if you can't help me, you should help somebody else out. Reciprocity, golden rule, whichever one you want to use. The last thing in networking is have a great elevator speech. An elevator speech is, if you're in a gold building in Hartford and you get in the first floor with an executive for UTC or PwC or Ernst or whoever, you've got until you get to their floor to make an impression. You have about 15 seconds to do that. Katie, is it easy to do one of those? Not to put Katie on the spot, but you need to practice it so that when you get an opportunity to meet somebody for the first time, you leave a lasting impression. It's extremely important. And you may need to do it 100 different times, but it's something that you need to practice. The last thing with networking is know the networking rules. And I alluded to it earlier. When you wrap up any kind of a networking session, you always say, if there's anything that I can ever do for you, please let me know. And leave it at that. But always remember that you should try to circle back to that person and do something to help them. And as I said, as I pointed to you, if you can't, then help somebody else. Because in the end, it'll come back. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? Any of the alums want to make any comments about networking, how it's been effective for them?
I'd like to add to what Steve said about networking and reaching out to associations. I find that when you are reading trade journals, if you see someone that has made a quote in the industry that you're interested in, take that name down, give them a call. You'd be surprised how many CEOs and executive level people are available at their desk, and when you call them and you mention that you read something that they had said in a certain article, they'll be impressed and they'll give you some time to talk. So that's always worked for me, and I think that would be great for you too.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yes?
Want me to come up or comment on the networking?
Yeah, if you want to, that's fine.
From a networking standpoint, I'm in sales, and networking is extremely important because you want to have other people work for you as much as possible. But one thing you need to do is you need to be clear. You got an elevator speech, be clear they understand what it is that you're doing. I was in a group a number of years ago, and they had a number of attorneys that were in the group and some private equity people and business consultants. And we all told everybody what we did. And it went on for about a year and a half, and then I did a formal presentation to everybody, and they said, wow, I never knew you did that. And it was all the value-added propositions that we put into our program that makes a difference compared to the rest of the competition. So if anything, really be clear, and the elevator speech is really important because you're going to be on the spot, and it's like right off the bat, you've got to have it rehearsed. And the 6th degree of separation, you kind of almost alluded to that when you started. If you're sitting at a table and you want to get in on an account, it's amazing how many people at that table will know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. So, and it's constant, as you did say that, Steve. You're constantly working at this. Everywhere you go, you're working. Pleasure. I've written accounts from coaching, where the fellow I was coaching with, all of a sudden, he had a playbook, and it was the company logo that was the folder. And I said, you work at that company? And he said, yeah. And I said, I need to talk to you. And he said, well, you need to talk to the CFO. And he made the introduction. But it's, and that was $1 million account. So it is amazing where things come from. But again, it's something that you're constantly working at. It's fun and it's rewarding. And again, get someone to work for you, because you know how hard it is to pick up the phone and make a call. Someone can introduce you. It cuts the legwork down.
Thank you.
Steve, can I say something?
Yes.
So many of you have probably heard this story before, but for those of you that haven't, I'll tell it again, and if I'm boring you, I'm sorry. But I actually ended up at Quinnipiac quite by accident. I'm an alum from Quinnipiac. I graduated in '94. Then, to be quite honest, I didn't know how to write a resume, so I stayed on until '96, got a teaching degree, went off into the world, worked at Yale for 10 years, loved my job at Yale, absolutely loved it. But I read an article in the Quinnipiac Alumni magazine, and when I read it, it was about my boss, Tom Horn, at the time, who had written about creating a hard copy resume book. And this was back in 2005. As an alum, I was like, hard copy resume book, come on now. So I wrote an email saying, hi Tom, my name is Jill Farrell, and I explained to him that I was an alum. And I said, I'd love to talk to you a little bit and provide some feedback from my experience in working in career services at Yale. This time it had been 9 years. And so he invited me in for coffee, and the interesting thing was, I sent him the note, and he didn't get back to me for 13 months. Okay? So I still to this day have no idea how he stayed so organized that 13 months later he was able to find my email. But we came in, I had coffee with him, and I really thought that my feedback was just as an alum trying to help the school. And long story short, by the end of the conversation, he was telling me about this position that they were creating. And I didn't think much of it, but I received an offer, declined it, received another offer, declined it. And finally I said, gosh, sure, if you really want me to come over to Quinnipiac that bad, I'd be happy to. So that's how I ended up at Quinnipiac. I didn't pursue the job here. I love it more than I enjoyed Yale, but it was an opportunity that came about as a result of me just writing an email to somebody. It took a long time, so, and then after he had talked about the position, I hadn't heard from him a little while, but I checked back in. So it was kind of interesting the way that can work out. So I think the main thing too is recognizing an opportunity when it's there. I think oftentimes we don't recognize an opportunity, especially if we're happy with where we are. As I said, I was really very happy. But then when I thought it through more, and I thought, well, this could be a good opportunity to do something that I've never done, to expand my skills. So.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Now I'm going to bring Mary back up, and we can get started, and I think we're ready to start dinner, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you.
Yes. We're getting to the fun part of the evening, and that involves food. And the first thing I saw when I walked in the room was the chocolate cake over there. It's like, oh my goodness, this in fact is a good day. Mike, could I ask you to just say where you work, please?
Yes, I work for a company called USI, which is an insurance brokerage outfit. We're about the 8th largest brokerage in the country. It's a Goldman Sachs partner company. And I work out of 2 offices, one in Westport and one in Meriden.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I must say, as I was sitting there listening to Mike, listening to Jill, listening to Kelly, and also to Steve, I found myself, as I often do in this situation, just getting so darn excited. And what I found myself getting excited about is the fact I was thinking to myself, this is something that, as I alluded to earlier, you all have 100% control over. We have 100% control over the attitudes with which we approach our lives, the mindset that we approach every situation and every personal and professional meeting with. We have 100% control over the networking tips. And Steve, you hit it out of the park with everything that you said today. Everything that he mentioned are things that you can do. And incidentally, you really need to do that. We have 100% control over the tips that Jill and Mike were sharing. So again, it is up to you in this room to create the life that you want and to create the career that you want, and you can do it. I mean, how cool is that? It's not up to the economy. It's not up to the particular major that you're in. It's not up to anything in the external world. It's up to you. I just love that. Let's help ourselves to some salad and entree. Jill, is there any particular order that we should attack the buffet table? There we go, starting with red. And we're going to have a chance to eat, and then we're going to get to the etiquette part of the evening. So enjoy dinner right now. All right, so please continue enjoying your dinner, and we can just do it quietly. We are going to get to some fun stuff right now. We're going to talk about etiquette. And before I introduce our etiquette expert, I'm going to put someone on the spot. His name is Matthew. Matthew, could you come up here for a moment, please? Matthew is a sophomore. Woo! Look how good he's looking. Matthew is a sophomore. And what I would like to ask you, Matthew, is what did you learn at the table right over there? Come over here to the microphone to make sure the camera can get it. What did you learn at our table?
It is more inappropriate to toss your tie than it is to tuck your tie, but tucking your tie is still not appropriate. So what you need to do is just not be sloppy.
Thank you very much. Perfect. He sat down and put his food in front of him and tucked his tie into his shirt. And I very kindly, because I never would want to make anyone feel bad or tease anybody to their face, I said to our etiquette expert, "Now, is that the right thing to do?" Knowing darn well it was not. But it was a very logical thing, because you sit down at any dinner, certainly a business dinner, a professional dinner, and you don't want your food to end up all over your tie. So you were being very practical, very logical, Matthew, but wrong. But now you know, and that's why we're here tonight. That's why we're here. I'm so pleased to welcome up to the podium. We have a true etiquette expert with us. She is a true etiquette professional. Her website, do check it out. It's oneetiquetteplace.com. She teaches the finer points of etiquette in business situations, in social situations. She was trained by the top etiquette and protocol firm in our nation, Kelly Soloway.
Hello, everyone. Is this loud enough? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you, Mary. And I am enjoying my table over there. And Matthew was certainly a good sport for coming up here. I, too, am a former recruiter, just to let everybody know. And one of the reasons why I did get into etiquette is that my time at a corporate firm, I did a lot of recruiting, especially out at college campuses. And I found that a lot of the students that we were interviewing, they were missing a few of the finer points of etiquette. So when I left corporate, I decided to open my own firm and try and offer these skills to students. And here I am today, so I'm really happy to be a part of this evening. But what I'd like to do, first of all, I'd like to say that interviews can be very nerve-wracking, brain-draining, headache-inducing experiences. And these days, you'll find that more recruiters and employers are finding a way to make an interview even more difficult by adding a meal to the whole recruiting process. So this means that in addition to listening to the interviewer, formulating intelligent responses, and trying your hardest to be confident, you now have to pay attention to how you look while you're eating. Case in point, tie in shirt. So today, I'd like to talk about 4 areas that I think would be helpful. I know everybody's finishing their meal, so I think, the areas that I'm going to address, we're not going to do the mechanics of how to hold your fork. I think it's more important to talk a little bit about basic table manners, as well as the dish dilemma, and consume and converse, and finally finish with a bang. Okay, so we'll first start with minding your manners. It may seem unnecessary to mention, but those basic table manners that you were taught as a child still matters. So I'd like to ask you, and I'd certainly like everyone to be interactive, what are some of the basic table manners that you think are important during a meal, during a business lunch or meal? Anybody? Basic table manners, yes.
Don't chew with your mouth open.
Excellent. Don't chew with your mouth open. Anybody else? Yes.
Put your napkin in your lap.
First thing, yes, that's what you do. Very good. Yes.
No elbows on the table.
No elbows on the table. Very good.
Yes.
Wait until everybody at the table has their food before starting?
Yes. There is one rule, though, that I will tell you. I think are there 8 at a table? Okay, there are 8. So the rule of thumb is when 6 have been served, typically you sit at a table of 8 or 10. So when 6 are served, you can start eating, and that certainly is acceptable. So that is a good point to be addressed. Let's see. All right. Anything else that anyone else, any other basic table manners? Well, I can tell you that being polite is certainly critical. In addition to evaluating your answers to questions, an interviewer is also assessing your personality. So think about it. You're at a dinner. You're at a restaurant. It's typically you and the interviewer. All right? So they're going to watch how you interact with the wait staff. So let's say that you're ordering something, and perhaps you order chicken, but you don't want the sauce, and light on the salt, and maybe dressing on the side of your salad. What do you think that is? Do you think that's a red flag? Perhaps maybe you might be a little high maintenance. I don't know. It's something that you might just want to hold back. Remember, it's an interview. You're not there for the meal. So I wanted certainly to make that point, and be courteous and respectful throughout that whole dinner process. And words such as please and thank you is always important. And of course, being aware of your elbows and on the table and chewing with your mouth open. This certainly all conveys a negative impression, which we do not want to do. I think also being prepared. When you think about it, this typically is a time when you've gone through maybe 2 or 3 interviews. And this interview during the meal is typically your final meal. So you want to be prepared with some out-of-the-box questions. You've had some formal time with the interviewer, so now it's a time to maybe ask some questions out of the box. And that might be, so tell me, Mary, about XYZ company. How long have you been there, and what is it that you like about the company? And this also gives you the opportunity to have them answer the question so that you might be able to take a bite of your meal, because that can be somewhat of an awkward situation too, and we certainly don't want to talk with our mouth full. Another point that I wanted to make, and I've seen this with executives as well as some general friends when I'm out to dinner, people tend to talk with their silverware. Is that something that you've seen out there? Have you seen anyone make a point with a knife? Should have some... I have to stay in front of the so I'll just take this. So I find... Sorry about that. I find that when people talk with their knife and make a point, I mean, it is just a little offensive. So I wouldn't do that if I were you. All right, so that pretty much sums up the basic table manners. Some tips that I did want to address while you're at the table. I know this is a buffet setting, but when you're at a more formal restaurant, you'll have salt and pepper shakers at the table, and you'll have maybe 2 glasses, 3 glasses, for wine and water. I just wanted to address the place setting, because some people are a little intimidated when they sit down at a place setting and they may see 3 forks, 2 spoons, a knife, a soup bowl, a soup spoon, and 3 glasses, and a bread plate. I think it's important that you can navigate through a place setting without being nervous, because I think that also shows a confidence level. You're there to get the job, and you don't want to be thinking about what glass to reach for. And I know earlier Jill shared a little tip that I'd like to share with everybody. When you're sitting at a table and you don't really know which glass is yours, has anyone ever thought has anyone questioned which glass is theirs? Okay, great. So the tip is, Under the table, you want to do this, all right? D and B, drink and bread. If there's anything that you do remember, maybe it's this. You put it under the table, and just to remind yourself, D is to the right, drink, and bread is to the left. So you always reach to the right to get your drink glass, and always reach to the left for your bread plate. It's just a simple tip. Another tip that you might want to use is when someone asks for the salt, rather than just passing them the salt, you want to pass the pepper and salt together. Has anyone heard that before? Okay, great. That's another little tip for you. And pass to the right. You always want to pass the bread to the right, because sometimes, actually, in a situation with just two people, that might not be necessary, but that's just another tip that you might want to remember. But moving on to the dish dilemma, what I mean by that is, even though you are being treated to a nice meal, you are not free to order any dish you like. Has anyone ever thought of, maybe I shouldn't order the lobster because it's at market value and it might be $34? And so you really want to address the type of item, type of dish that you don't want to order. And so the point is you are in an interview, and therefore you have the duty of maintaining a certain level of professionalism and formality throughout the meal. So there's no definitive rules as to food selection, but during the interview during your meal, the interviewer follow their lead. They will order perhaps an appetizer, a main meal, and if they order a cocktail, I don't know if you're old enough, probably not, but you certainly do not want to order any kind of alcohol ever during a meal and an interview. But you definitely want to follow their lead, because what happens is, if you only order one dish and they order 3, it might be a little uncomfortable when they're still eating and you're just sitting there and you're finished. So you want to keep up the pace with them as well. Does that make sense? Yes? Great. And avoid messes. This is something that was brought up at the table earlier, and that is you want to stay clear from dishes that may be messy. Any ideas to what you might want to stay away from?
Greasy cheeseburgers.
Greasy? Who said that? Yes. Have you been in a situation where you've had a greasy cheeseburger?
No, my mom just taught me right.
Okay, there you go. Yes. Yes.
Spaghetti and meatballs.
Very good. Yeah, that's a good one.
Lobster.
Lobster, yes. Not only is it the most expensive dish on the menu, it's also the messiest. Yes, and yes.
Ribs.
I was just going to say ribs, very good. You don't want to have your fingers, licking your fingers during an interview. It's gross. Yeah, it's not good. It is a little gross.
Kelly?
Yes.
What about soup?
Okay, soup, excellent question. When you're served soup, you're usually served a cup or a bowl of soup. Let me ask you this. If you're served a cup of soup, where would you put your spoon? Would you place it in the cup and rest it in the cup, or would you place it on the dish that the soup cup comes on, I should say?
Dish.
On the dish, yes. But when you have soup in a bowl, you can have the soup resting in the bowl. It's bigger and, it's allowed. What else do you do with the soup? You soup away. Soup away. Where's my spoon? Okay? You soup away. Like ships that go out to sea, I spoon my soup away from me. Has anyone ever heard that? And then, yes, so that was a good question, Mary. And no slurping. No slurping the soup. Okay? Again, foods that you want to avoid, foods that don't smell. Onions, garlic, all right? You want to avoid those foods that have a strong or unpleasant odor. You do not want your interviewer to remember you as the candidate that had smelly breath, right? So no matter how much you love onions and garlic, lay off the stinky ones, and remember, it's not about the meal, it's about the interview. I had mentioned earlier, follow the leader. You know, it just will make you more comfortable just to follow what they order, appetizer, meal, that sort of thing. Yes?
Okay, I have a question.
Sure.
So you're in an interview situation, but you have a meal in front of you. So they keep firing questions, firing questions, firing questions. You're supposed to eat your meal, but every time you go to put something, there's a question. So how do you approach that?
Well, you have to remember that you're not really there to eat. And a tip that I have for most people, most kids, is to eat before you go, so you're not really hungry. But to address that question Jill had, I think the interviewer is just trying to really look at your social graces and how you handle yourself in that kind of situation. And so when he or she is asking you all those types of questions and you're just about to put that bite of food in your mouth, you just have to put it back down. Sometimes there will be a time when you will be chewing and they ask you a question. Well, shame on the interviewer, because the interviewer has to be savvy too, and typically they are. They're the ones that understand that you're, you might be a little nervous and they're just trying to make you a little more comfortable. So I think with the engaging of the questions and being prepared to ask them questions to make them talk, and people really love to talk about themselves, really. When you're in an interview and you see someone, I'm a sailor, and when I was interviewing, I had sailing prints in my office, and when someone came into my office and said, "Oh, are you a sailor?" and I said, "Yes, I am," and then I would talk a little bit, and that's something that's nice, people asking you questions, asking the interviewer questions, because they do all the talking. So I think people like to talk about themselves, and that, again, is part of the interview. They are assessing your personality. They want to know if you're a fit for the company's culture, and they're trying, to really feel you out. So did that help? Did that answer? Okay, great. Any other thoughts or questions? Yes?
If I'm having a lunch and it's not necessarily an interview but with the client, I know I'm not there to eat, to be with them. I always have in my mind what I'm going to eat. I have my standby meals I go to, so you don't spend a lot of time perusing the menu. And then I typically try to do is I avoid what a lot of business people do now at lunches, because everyone's trying to stay lighter and healthier, is they do salads with the protein on top. But I find with salads you have to cut the lettuce or it's like hanging out of your mouth or whatever. So I've come to find out that that's off the menu and I don't even have that. So if you come in, you can sit there and order real quick and get stuck with the long meal. You know, if you have a basic chicken meal, you open it up, you go to the chicken, you're done, and now you're back focused.
What about that tomato? I saw some tomatoes in tonight's dinner. Have you ever cut a tomato and it just slipped off your plate? That's happened to me. So you try to avoid that type of food on your plate if you know that that could happen. But that is a good point. You try, to just choose menu items that you're comfortable with. Another point that I did not make was when you cut your food, you want to cut one piece at a time. You're not 4 years old. Your mother's not cutting your meat. Okay, you don't want to cut all pieces of the meat at once. You want to cut one piece at a time and eat it. So I do see people cutting their food into little minuscule pieces. So just do it one time, one piece at a time.
Kelly, I have a question. What
Yes.
happens if you cut that tomato and it flies across the room? What is the
Well, remember that scene in Pretty Women? I'm dating myself with Julia. You just kind of laugh, and it happens, and we're human beings. We're not perfect, and you'll probably get a little chuckle about it. Yeah, and maybe they'll make you feel comfortable because they've probably been in that situation before, right? Mary, did you have a question?
I did. What do you advise, let's say if you were being interviewed, Kelly, and the interviewer at the end of the meal says to you, Kelly, would you like dessert? And you don't know if they're going to order dessert or not yet. What should one say?
Well, I would say no,
But if you want, okay, here's something. If you want the interview to last a little longer, I think that would be a great idea because you have the hiring manager in front of you, so why not? Order that dessert. So I think that would be a good strategy to keep the interview going a little longer. Yes.
Yes. I have a question. I took an etiquette class at the place I interned last summer, and they told us never to take home a doggy bag. Is that true?
That is so true, and I did mention that in the last piece, so I definitely agree. It's something that, again, you're not there for the meal, and the doggy bag is not necessary, so good point.
I take more paycheck.
Pardon me? Oh. You don't want to share that comment?
You're looking to take home a paycheck, not a leftover meal, right?
Exactly. You want, the goal of this interview is to walk away with a job offer. It might not happen at the meal, but I have tips for how you can get that job offer. All right, so finishing with a bang. How am I doing with time? Am I good with time?
I think we are.
Okay, great. All right, so now you've gotten yourself through the lunch or dinner interview with your potential new company, all right? So you want to finish with a bang. Unlike that standard interview, you just don't say thank you and shake their hand, firm handshake, web to web. You want to, a couple of things. First of all, you don't want to offer to pay for the meal. You were invited to the lunch, therefore the interviewer will pay for your lunch. So just to give you that tip, never ask for a doggy bag, no matter how delicious the meal was, and reaffirm your interest. I can't tell you how many times I interviewed people and they never asked for the job and they never told me what their interest level was. So wouldn't it be nice if you ended the meal by saying, I really enjoyed our time together and I'm very interested in your company and I'd like to start working next week. I mean, you don't want to say that, but certainly you want to reaffirm your interest and maybe even go to the point where you want to ask them what the next steps are. And, it's okay. It's okay to maybe put the interviewer on the spot because they're in a position where, this could be the third or fourth interview and you've gotten to this point, so that's a good sign. So ask them. Ask them what their thoughts are, what the next steps are, and reaffirm your interest. And then say thank you, handshake, and you always, I don't care what anybody says, you send a handwritten thank you note. These emails are quick and easy, but they're not personable. I would highly recommend that you do send a thank you note, and certainly if they bought you lunch, and they took their time out of the day, and they paid for a nice lunch, you want to say thank you. So remember, the meal interview is tricky, but not impossible. And with a little guidance and a little preparation, I think you'll do fine. But really, you want to understand the mechanics of navigating through a lunch or dinner so that you're not worried about how you hold your fork or how to cut that tomato. You want to focus on the interview and the information being exchanged. So I hope that helps, and I wish you all luck and bon appetit.
Oh, great.
Thank you very much.
Great. Let me take these for you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And Kelly will be here to answer questions later. I just had a thought when you were talking about two quick things. And then we're going to take just a 5-minute break so we can have our dinner plates cleared. We can help ourselves to the yummy desserts over there. And then we're going to talk about fashion. It's all about the way we're presenting ourselves to the world. It's about the way you present yourself in a business meeting, in a business interview. And that includes the way you conduct yourself from an etiquette perspective. Kelly, thank you. Wonderful tips. It includes the way you look from the outside, the clothes that you wear, and our fashion consultant, Debbie Wright, is going to get into that in just a moment. Two quick things. I was thinking as Kelly was talking, and we talked earlier, Kelly, for the women in the audience, one thing that you don't want to do is at the end of an interview, you eat a meal, you start off the interview with your lipstick nicely applied. By halfway through the dinner, the lipstick is long gone, chances are, unless you're wearing the kind that lasts for 8 hours. And that really does work, by the way. I wear that on occasion. But at the end of the meal, you know darn well the lipstick is gone, but you do not, correct, Kelly? You do not reach in your purse, pull out your lipstick, and reapply it at the table. Don't do that. Even if you're going someplace afterwards, you stop at the ladies' room on the way out. So no lipstick application, correct? Okay. And secondly, interviews are certainly can be situations that can make you a little nervous, make you a little anxious if you're not used to it, if you haven't done a lot, or even if you have, but it's for a job that you are so excited about, you want it with all of your heart. You tend to be a little nervous. Just a little key for really all situations in life when you're feeling nervous, and that's not a real nice feeling, isn't it? I mean, it's more fun to feel confident than it is to feel nervous or unconfident. A little key, research shows that if you act, and try this and get back to me, it does work. If you act confidently, if you walk into an interview, if you walk into a restaurant, if you walk into a business meeting, networking event, and you just act confidently, within 10 minutes, that's how long it takes our brain to catch up to our behavior. So within 10 minutes, if you are acting confidently, even though you will be the only one who knows you're faking it, the rest of the world will think, oh my goodness, isn't he self-assured? Isn't he feeling on top of his game? Within 10 minutes, you will begin to feel confident. So just a little tip. Fake it until you make it, as they say. Let's take a 5-minute break, Steve, is that right? And then we'll be back with our fashion consultant to learn about our physical image and the way we are presenting, the way we look to the world. Now, that's probably not something you should do in the world of etiquette, Katie, I'm assuming, right? Take the knife to the glass just to get people's attention, but I'm doing that today. Kelly. Or you could raise your hand. That would be a little nicer. That's right. Well, all right, we are back. We are back. Thank you very much. Yummy dessert. I'm proud to announce I only had half of a piece of chocolate cake. I cut it in half. Katie, our model, who you will be meeting momentarily, is going to have the other half. And she was smart enough to delay her eating the cake because she said, I don't want to spill it all over my suit. And I said, aren't you the smart one? Aren't you the smart one? So let's talk a little bit about fashion and more specifically about image. You know, it's not only about fashion in terms of we hear the word fashion and we think, don't we, Debbie, in terms of what New York is showing us on the runways. We're not talking about that sort of fashion. We're talking about our image and what you wear. Make sure it suits the occasion. Make sure it's appropriate. Make sure it suits your body. Make sure it's flattering on you. And this is true for men as well as women. So I don't want any of the men, rolling their eyes and saying, fashion, what does that have to do with me, for Pete's sake? Only women are interested in that. It's just as important for you. So I'm so pleased to introduce a friend of mine. She is a phenomenal fashion and image consultant. She's been in this business for many, many years. Her website, and I will give the website of all our experts again later on, and you should write them down and check them out for more information. Follow up if you have any questions. Her website is projectcloset.com. She has a weekly fashion and image and trend segment on WFSB's Better Connecticut. She is a regular fashion contributor on my radio show. She does a weekly segment on 96.5 FM as well. Fashion and image consultant, Miss Debbie Wright.
Okay. So image, that's what I'm here to talk to you all about today. And image today means much more than that face-to-face introduction. And one of the things I want to be certain to touch upon is online image, because I know that's something that's very, very important to bring up. and very important to think about. Back to the points that Mary has made earlier in the theme of what we're trying to teach you here. Overall, having a positive attitude and knowing that you can achieve anything that you want, presenting yourself in the most positive manner is a choice that you have complete control over. You determine how you want people to perceive you. Now, online, I know that offers up a whole new spectrum of thought. So what I'm just going to say about that particular realm of image is always just be conscious of what it is you're doing online. Because everything today, as you know, in this economy, but again, it doesn't matter. It's all about your attitude and how you approach things. But one thing you don't want to do is limit yourself or limit your potential opportunities because of something you really didn't think through. So all I ask of you and all I will leave with you today in terms of online image, whether it be Facebook, whether it be LinkedIn, which is certainly the professional, more suited for that part of what you're here to do in the professional network arena, but the social media, the Facebooks and the Twitters and those types of entities, just be cognizant of what's being put on there and know, and I will share with you a real life story. I have a client who's a vice president of human resources for a big company. And she was interviewing not a student, but someone who had several careers and was changing careers and was certainly very applicable and had the expertise to handle the job that she was interviewing for. So it came down to her and one other woman. And between the two, she wasn't certain. She accessed their Facebook pages. And on the Facebook page, one of the candidates, who was a strong front runner, had put on there, had a great interview today, really love the company, but I'm holding out until I hear from company ABC. So, again, probably just not thinking clearly, obviously, thinking she's just sharing this message with her friends. Regardless, didn't consciously think that through, and as a result, lost the job. So I just want to make that point, and I'll make it again. Just consciously think about how you're being perceived, because online image can oftentimes come down to whether you get the job or you don't. It can come down to a photo that puts you in a situation that's not perceived appropriate. It can be by association, sorry to say, but that's just the reality. And oftentimes, it's just those little pieces of differentiation that will get you the job or won't get you the job. So there's my little spin on online image. Just be very conscious of everything that you're doing online, because even when it's deleted, I know the technical folks have always told me it still lives somewhere. With the internet, it always lives somewhere. So that's my little online notation. But image as a whole, as I said, you are in complete control of how you're being perceived or how you want to be perceived. 55% of first impressions are made solely based on how you look. Now again, there's certainly that marriage of inner and outer beauty and talents and education and areas of expertise and in relationships and experiences, but oftentimes to get your foot in the door and to move through a company to make sure that all you have to say is getting heard, you better be certain that you're on top of your game. And what I like to say is that you always look your personal best. So remember that, 55%. I also found another interesting statistic as I've researched this arena quite a bit. The number one reason why someone isn't called back for a second interview, the number one reason was based on how they looked. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I have some wonderful models who will be my visual exhibit, and I will go through various points. But it's very, very, very important to differentiate yourself in this day and age in a positive way. So with men and women, and as Mary said, this certainly applies to the men as well. I know for the most part, in an interview, dressing and buying a suit and making sure you look polished is pretty standard. But there are things that oftentimes you don't consider that are being looked upon, again, in a very competitive market like we are today, every little detail matters. So I want to just bring up a couple of those details. For example, a woman. You certainly want to be careful of necklines. You want to be sure that you're dressed very appropriately. You want to be sure that you're dressed in a manner that flatters your shape, but is also very respectful and very appropriate. The other thing with a woman is you want to be certain not to over-accessorize. Much like the etiquette and the dinner interview, when you're interviewing and you're sitting across from somebody, be certain that what you're wearing isn't too distracting. You don't want big earrings or statement necklaces are great on the runway, but they're not the most appropriate thing to wear during an interview. So keep it simple and don't be distracting. The other thing is if you carry in a portfolio or a purse or some sort of briefcase, when you open it, and this goes for male or female, be certain it's not a mess. Because these are those little details that the interviewer is looking at. You know, anyone can dress up, but, you know, what does their car look like? You know, how do they keep their briefcase in their pocketbooks? That indicates the type of person that you are, how organized you are, how much you care about that. And remember, when you're interviewing in a company, the way that you present yourself isn't only a matter of your level of self-respect, but it's also the respect you have for the interviewer and the company. Because when they're looking at hiring you as a future employee, wherever you are, whether you're out to dinner, with a client, off-site, you represent and you are a reflection of that company. So they're looking at all of those things. Also, something that comes up, and Mary and I talk about quite often, we all, for the women and men, if you like a certain perfume, please do not wear it on an interview. You don't know who's allergic, who's sensitive. Even if you think it's the slightest bit, just again, always keep it simple. You'll always be safe. Simple, appropriate, and polished. For a guy and a gal, your shoes. That's another extension of the outfit that be certain is polished and looks good. Again, we can all dress in a suit and put on that nice navy jacket or the nice navy skirt. Be certain that your shirts and your blouses are pressed. Your shoes, I know it sounds old-fashioned, are polished, or that you go buy a new pair of shoes. So just be certain your shoes. For a male, the belt. Be certain that you're not pulling out just because you have a great new suit on. Make sure every bit of your outfit is polished and pulled together. Okay? Ties, accessories, simple. Tie clips, which our wonderful model Matt is wearing, a very nice touch. Just keep it clean, but just remember those things that you might not have otherwise thought of. Beyond the suit, keep things simple. Make sure every piece of it is polished, professional, and make sure whatever you're carrying is well organized and you're well prepared. Okay? The other quick thing in terms of image that's extremely important is eyewear. And I like to bring this up because this is another extension of our style. It's how the world sees us. It's how we present ourselves. I think this probably applies more for the women, but there are a lot of great designers out there creating a lot of wonderful eyewear because it's an extension of your style. Like I said, it's an accessory. Be certain that when you're interviewing, you're not wearing your frames that are all blinged out, that have lots of crystals and lots of things going on. Make sure you're choosing eyewear that flatters your shape, the shape of your face, flatters your skin tone. I mean, these are all things you might not think require the emphasis that they do, but they absolutely do. Keep it simple, keep it contemporary, keep it current, but just go with something that's safe, especially for the interview. Okay, so eyewear, that's the other thing. I think at this point, I'd like to bring up Miss Katie as the example. We went shopping and got her all ready for her interview. One of the things I want to mention, just in terms of what we talked about in the beginning, the 6 degrees of separation. When I first met Katie, which again, it's just so funny, what are the odds? We met yesterday in Hartford for the first time, and we met in email and were introduced. She was going to be the model for today. And come to find out, she's interviewing in New York for the very company that I worked for in the exact office building. And as it turns out, you know, we may be able to connect, and there may be some resources that I have from when I used to work there that may be able to help Katie in some way, which I hope. But I just think that that's so important to mention because it's what we're talking about today. In terms of career, you just never know. I mean, what are the odds? So it's just one of those things that you always want to be aware of. And on that note, just real quick before we get into the outfit, 2 of the things that I'll share with you in terms of career success: never burn any bridges in terms of the 2 tips that I want to be sure to pass along to you. And I know you've probably all heard that before, but I can tell you, true testament, there are folks that I worked with my first job out of college that I still contact that have helped me throughout my career. And I won't mention how long that's been, but nonetheless, you just never know. And just to the example of yesterday, never, ever, ever, and I don't care what kind of job it is, if you start in the mailroom, you work your way up, if it's a summer job, if it's not necessarily even the job that you're looking to land when you graduate, all along the way, always be respectful, always be dressed appropriately, always treat the company you're working for with the utmost respect. It will always, always do well by you. Always do that. And the other thing that I always like to share is exceed expectations. And again, whether you're loading trucks or you're doing whatever you're doing now, building those resources, creating those relationships, you will always come out ahead when you give people more than they want. So always deliver more than you are asked to deliver, and you will have a successful career. So back to image. We had great fun when we selected the outfit for Katie, because what I want to demonstrate with Katie is this is certainly very business smart, very business appropriate, but it's an alternative to the traditional navy and the black that's very safe. But this is a way to do a little pattern, but doing it in a very tasteful and conservative way. It shows that she has great style. It shows that she's very classic. And it really showcases her figure, which, again, we don't want to hide. You don't want to wear something big and boxy. You just want to be sure that you're polished and appropriate. I added the belt detail because that is something that's trendy right now. It's something that gives a little bit of detail, and it's certainly something that celebrates her youth, but still gives her that look of that she's taking the job seriously and that she really means business. One of the things we want to demonstrate, when you're first starting out, I know that we all don't necessarily have a large bank account to go buying all new clothes for our new jobs and our new careers. One of the things you do not want to skimp on is your interview suit for both men and women. You want to, I have it right here. You want to make sure that you're investing in pieces that are versatile, that you can get a lot of mileage out of. So this happens to be a dress which you would have never known. And this is perfectly appropriate if, Katie, we're now going out with colleagues to a business dinner in the summer. We can add a little scarf, and we can transition this piece that she can wear during the day to evening. That's one of the things I also want to point out. There are many different levels of dressing appropriately and making certain that you're always conveying the right image. There are business dinners. Be certain that you are conscious of how you're representing yourself, not only in how you eat, but how you dress. For a woman, don't think because it's after 5, that's a permission slip to, wear what you might normally wear with girlfriends. Be cognizant that you're still on the clock, that you're still conducting business, that your image and your reputation is still something that people are looking at. So pieces like this allow you to have the versatility. By changing out accessories, you can transition from work day to work night. So this is a great piece to invest in. The jacket also is something that she can mix and match with skirts and dresses, and she can really wear all year round and have a nice staple piece in her closet. So there you go. Thank you. Okay, Matthew. One of the things I want to talk about before we go into Matthew and what's appropriate for men, I want to make sure to point out the fact that business smart, which I like to call it, or business casual, which it's often called in the workplace, is also another category of dress that people can find very challenging, and they don't know what's appropriate, what is or what isn't. Always know for a man, khakis, you guys have it so easy. For the most part, it's khakis and a button front shirt with or without a tie, but very clean, Always make sure you're pressed and presentable, but khakis are pretty much a good standard for casual Fridays. A woman, on the other hand, has a little bit more of a challenge because oftentimes khakis doesn't work. But I will tell you, for a woman, a nice dress, especially going into the weather that we're entering right now in this area, skirts, dresses, make sure they're at knee length, nothing shorter. They hit right at the knee. No pantyhose. It's perfectly professional and perfectly appropriate. And a nice low heel. You want to be sure you're never wearing a heel that's too high. You want to be sure that you can walk appropriately, bless you, and that it's, something that's conducive for the work environment. Just be certain. I get calls a lot from human resources and from companies who just find it very difficult to hone in on the business casual because people tend to take it to great lengths. But I will tell you that in order to move forward, make sure you're always dressing for the job. You may have heard this, for the job you want, not for the job you have. And even on business casual Fridays or whatever it is, make sure, I always tell my clients and every group that I speak to, dress for that job you want. Always look your best, because when there are opportunities to move up, don't think that part of that decision is going to be based on how you present yourself consistently. Okay? So with you guys, you again have it pretty straightforward for the interview. We just wanted to show, I actually didn't even put the jacket on that I had selected for Matthew because he looks very nice, and he certainly is dressed to the points that I'd like to make. For a man, you just want to be sure that your suit and your shirts and your pants fit, because one of the biggest things that I see out there is that you're not wearing tailored suits, or you're not wearing tailored jackets. These are the things that you want to make, these are the details you want to pay attention to that add the polish. So for that first suit, we went to a store called Stackpole, Moore and Tryon in downtown Hartford. Stores like that who offer tailoring, who provide those types of services. Go to experts, invest in a good suit. It'll last you a lifetime. You'll have the fit that you want, and you'll also be able to go back and have alterations made one way or the other. So it's definitely worth the money. Don't skimp on the interview suit. It'll also provide pieces that you can mix and match. But fit, 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 and make sure that everything is pressed. The fit on the jacket that he was wearing was just perfect. So again, he demonstrated the point perfectly. Nice, crisp shirt, and the ties are often the expression that men have. That's the way that you can kind of accessorize day to day, changing out the color of the shirts and the color of the ties. Perfectly appropriate to mix patterns, a little bit of stripe, plain, a little bit of texture in the jacket with a printed tie. Perfectly appropriate, balanced with a plain, solid shirt. So make sure, polished shoes, belt. And again, you've added a little element of style with the clip, and I know you're wearing something you had mentioned from your grandfather.
Yeah, my jacket is my grandfather's, and it ended up just fitting really well. I got it tailored, so.
And I love that. And again, I think that's such a great expression of who Matthew is. And I think that, it just shows classic, timeless pieces never go out of style. So I think that's a great honor that he's wearing. I said, don't change. I love that. So the other point I just want to make, thank you to the models, is I like to touch upon campus appropriate wear. And the reason I want to do that is because I know with the various campuses that we have visited, sometimes it's something that gets brought up that, students, and I know, crawling to, waking up, running to class, you're not always necessarily completely polished and completely pulled together. But what I want to stress is that the faculty that you, and I know you all recognize this because that's why you're here, learning and participating in a wonderful workshop like this, it's very, very important to try to always present yourself, always present yourself in the most positive light, because your faculty and the people that you're surrounded with now are often your first level of referrals, of references. So you want to be sure that you're respectful of the class time, that you look appropriate, that you just handle yourself in the most polished and professional way that you can during class, because these are folks that truly, beyond being great references for you, that will help you. Who knows who they might know. If you really stand out all along the way in showing and demonstrating that you care about how you present yourself, you will always have an abundance of resources available to you. So, thank you.
Wasn't that great? So helpful. Thank you very much, Debbie Wright. 2 quick things. Handshake. I remember I'm going to put my recruiting hat on. Interviewers usually make a decision about you within 6 seconds. And what happens within those 6 seconds? You shake their hands. You have to practice with your family, practice with your friends, your handshake. It cannot be too limp. Now that is gross to use that with your word. A wet, limp handshake, oh my goodness, no. A bone-crushing handshake, oh my goodness, no. You have to practice and perfect a handshake. It is key. I have a tip I'm not going to share right now, but if you're interested, I will share it with you later in terms of how to do the perfect handshake. Everyone can have one. Before we get back to Steve, and Steve, I'd like to have you come back because I know you have a great deal more information to share, wonderful tips. Do any of our alums have any thoughts, any comments that they would like to share on the image, the fashion perspective, based on your perspectives, based on your experiences from hiring? Any comments whatsoever? Yes.
Certainly. For the benefit of the rest of the group here, my industry is accounting. I was a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we're one of the international accounting firms. And so the standard of dress in our industries might be quite different than, say, a software manufacturer where anything goes in those industries. But in our industry, in the banking industry, we're very prim and proper. And for men, I would suggest, and I like what Matthew had on, a blue blazer or a black blazer is a wonderful piece of clothing. But I would suggest you get it as he has it, without brass buttons, but rather the normal buttons. So when you buy your blazer, get one with normal buttons and not what you normally see, brass buttons. Also for men, on my casual days, it's always a collared shirt. In some industries, and even in mine, on a Friday, we allowed our folks to wear golf shirts, but never without a collar, right? I used to tell my people all the time, in our business, we're dealing with the customers all the time. You always want to look better than your customer. Always, always, always. So if their dress code is sports jacket and tie, you go with a suit. If theirs is all casual, you go with a sports jacket. Maybe with a tie, maybe you don't. But always look better than your customer. Also, you have to, when you're interviewing, know your industry. And I had a kid come to me, a recruit come to me out of Georgetown. This is around just before I retired in 2006 or 2007, and he had an earring on. Now, in some industries, that's perfectly acceptable, but in banking and in accounting, it isn't. There was no way that kid was getting past me, and he didn't get hired.
A question? Did you have a question?
Oh, I was going to say exactly what he just said. And also, the other thing is to be cleanly shaved. That was never touched upon, but I know usually chin straps are a no-go or things like that. Make sure your facial hair is in good appearance.
That's right. That's a very good point. And James, you're with a company I'm not real familiar with, but the name of it is Media Graphics. I might
That's actually my company.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I actually have a few things to say, if you don't mind.
Yes, I was going to ask. And also, the question I was going to pose to you is if you might be coming out of an environment that might be, in fact, be a little more creative than, for example, what you're coming out of, how does that affect, if at all, how folks interview with you, for example?
Well, I would think that in many situations, people have said the suit, the shirt, the jacket is very important. And in many industries, that's very prevalent. In my industry, I actually look for some things a little bit different every now and then because we want creative minds. Yes. So if I see somebody with the earring or the nose ring, I might think in my mind that person's a little bit eccentric, which I might want in that situation, especially if it's creative. So there is that variance, and you have to make sure you're playing the part depending on the job you're going for. And always try and adapt, I think people have mentioned that before, to whatever job you're going for.
Thank you. So again, and you mentioned doing the research. Boy, I remember when I was a recruiter and going back to the days before internet, and Steve, you and I used to talk about this, when you were going on an interview, you actually had to get in your car, drive to the town library to research a company, to read the annual report. Oh my goodness, could it be any easier? So there is no excuse in the world, if any of you ever go to an interview and are not fully prepared, shame on you. You don't deserve the job. It's too easy these days. So thank you for making that point. Steve, please come back up. Steve Harvey with Job Tutors, and you were sharing information before as far as networking, and I know that you have a lot of other great tips for us.
Thanks, Mary.
We're so glad you do.
There's been a theme throughout the evening, and we did not practice or rehearse this. Okay, so a lot of the stuff that I'm going to wrap up with, other people have brought to your attention this evening. I wanted to bring, this is called the reality check section of the presentation. First of all, for those of you who are seniors, and some of you seniors I've met here at workshops and things like that, and I can see a couple of you that are from before, hi, and finding a full-time position is really hard work. Sending out a couple of resumes is not hard work. Putting together a long plan and keeping to it and forcing yourself to stay with the plan is how you're really going to find the position that you're looking for. You need to be strategic in your plan. You need to know what industry, and not only industry, but particular companies that you'd really like to work for. Example, I always recommend you put the list together of the 10 top companies that you want to work for. When you go on and you start finding out information about them, find out everything possible. And thank God you don't have to go to the library like we had to. Do a Google alert. If you don't know what a Google alert is, write it down. Google alert will allow you to find out anything sent directly to your email, either on a daily or weekly basis, of everything that happens within that organization. Promotions, new positions, everything. So if you truly want to work for one of those companies, do it. Get on it right away. My other recommendation tying into that is, which I alluded to before, is get LinkedIn. Get LinkedIn and find out and tie into all of those companies so you know everything that's going on. You want to stand out, that's the way to do it. A theme throughout the whole night has been sweat the small stuff. The smallest thing, an earring, will knock you out. We were talking about that on the phone yesterday. And I was kidding with some of the people before. My old recruiting firm had 25 people working for us, and my partner used to hire our administrative staff. And we had this one young lady come in, very attractive, very articulate. She was great on the phone. And I used to come in the morning, and usually I was there before her, but when not, I'd walk by and she'd go, "Hi, how are you?" You noticed how I was talking? "Hi, how are you?" Well, what happened was people, when she got hired, she had a tongue pierced, okay? I don't even know what they call it. And everybody told her, don't let Steve see it because Steve will freak out. And Steve saw it about a month after she was there. Laura's laughing because Laura knows me pretty well. I went nuts on my partner because we had corporate accounts. If you guys had showed up at our office with a girl with a piercing in her tongue, that's the first impression. We talked about first impressions. That is not what I wanted. Now, we ended up keeping her because I had no justifiable reason to get rid of her, and she was really good. But I actually told her, take it out because I don't want to see it again. Okay, so it's another little tip. Now, you are going to experience, this is for seniors, you are going to experience rejection and frustration. It's going to happen. Get used to it. A lot of you have led shouldered lives, and nobody says no to you, okay? I see somebody in here shaking their head. Yes, you do get rejected. I'm going to give you a specific example because I think examples really pay off. Sacred Heart University. You guys know that, right down the street, right? The director of career services graduated from Notre Dame. Notre Dame, pretty good school. In sports management. Now, this is back in the day. He sent out 500, not 50, 500 resumes. Now, as Mary said before, that was back in the day when you had to go to the library, and we didn't go like this and hit send. He had to go out and get 500 envelopes, 500 letterhead. He had to type the letters. Then he had to lick the letters. And then he had to lick the stamps. Okay? Now, he said to me, I did 500 of them. Do me a favor, when you walk out of the room, look on the right-hand side. And that's how we left it. And I was like, what the heck is he talking about? So anyway, I walked out. And what was on the board? 16 letters of rejection from his job search. He's kept them for his entire career. He got 16 responses out of 500. Nobody else responded to him. And the 16 were all no's. So think about that. Think about licking 500 envelopes. All right? So if you think you're working hard by emailing 5 resumes to a company a week, think about that. Because that's what you really need to do. Now, what are employers looking for? And now I'm going to just fire a lot of quick stuff out at you. What are employers looking at? And this is from my interaction with them, because besides running job tutors, I also run an executive search firm. We do it both at the same time. We juggle really well. They look for excellent communication skills. They want someone who can articulate a thought and idea. They want a problem solver. They want you to explain how you have actually solved the problem and be very specific about how you do that. They want somebody who knows how to listen. That means you don't interrupt them when they're asking you something. And they're looking for team players. Now, it was really funny. I did 4 mock interviews today, and all 4 of the students that I met with had played high school sports. 2 of them were captains. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. That's like out of the 4 alum, 2 of them I have connections with. So you never know. But I said to them, what did you get from being in sports? And they talked about all of the positive things about interacting with teammates and knowing how to set goals and working together to achieve. That's what employers want to hear, because that's what you're doing when you move to the next step in your life. Other things. I constantly hear about poor business etiquette skills. And we've talked business etiquette, food etiquette, a lot of things tonight. Things you need to keep. Be respectful of people's time. If you tell me you're calling me at 20 after 3 on Thursday to do a follow-up with me, I set 5 minutes aside before, and then I allocate time after that. If you call 5 minutes after that time, I probably won't take your call. And I don't really care what the reason is. I'm a busy person. I allocated time for you. You were disrespectful for me. And this is coming from my clients, so think about that. When you're in an interview, don't act bored or cocky. That's the first way to turn somebody off. Not dressing appropriately. We have discussed this, and Debbie's given you a lot of tips. There are so many things that you can do. What is it, how many first seconds that they make? 6 seconds. So you walk in and, I don't know, you did one of these or whatever. You could blow it no matter how good you are that quickly after all of the work that you've done. The other thing that really annoys employers is not asking them good questions when you finally get in front of them. So it takes a lot of preparation. The key thing, and you've heard the word tonight, is differentiate yourself. You need to do something. If you apply for a job, you don't just send your resume into HR. You research, like I said, with LinkedIn. You find out who the hiring manager is, and you send a hard copy, letter of introduction. And first of all, if you can get somebody to introduce you, that's the better way to do it. But Laura's in corporate compliance. If she has an opening, her HR people are going to conduct the search. But if you want to be a compliance person and you sent a letter to Laura, she's going to probably open it, and she's going to look at it. Now, she could do one of 2 things. She could send it out to HR, or she could go, wow, this person really did some homework to find out who I am. And that might differentiate you so that she goes down to HR and says, I want to see this person. One little quick story. Young lady that we're representing, she was going to Siena College, really good school. Freshman year, her brother is going to medical school. Her dad couldn't afford to pay for both of them. So she decided that she would come back to Connecticut and go to a state school so her father could afford to send her brother to medical school. Is that sacrifice? Is it? Yeah, it is. And she uses that when she introduces herself to clients. It says something about her character. The fact that she has a 3.8 doesn't hurt her GPA either. But it's a thing. You want to be able to differentiate yourself when you're in a client. The other thing as far as preparation, we talked about this before. Know more about the organization than they do themselves. How do you do that? You get as much research as possible. You do Google alerts so that you know the latest things, because how cool would it be if right after Quinnipiac announced that they were going to open up a medical school that you were interviewing here for a position and you brought that up to somebody? You think that would impress them? Of course it would. There are commonly asked questions when you go on an interview. You can get them on the internet. If you really want some good ones, send me an email. My card's outside. I'll send you a list of the ones we send out to people. And here's what I tell you to do. Practice them. Write out a response. Get in front of the mirror. Watch your facial expressions when you're responding to them. Talk to your brothers, sisters, cousins, whoever. Somebody who's not going to laugh when you're practicing. Practice it. Get your responses down so they're just like that. You're going to present a heck of a lot better than if you go, It's not going to work. You're going to get blown out of the interview that way. And the other thing, too, in preparing for an interview, create a great list of questions. There are commonly asked questions that you should know, but then there are others that are specific for the position. So it means you have to do a lot of research beforehand. Professional follow-up. Kelly, we didn't practice this. She stole my thunder, but I didn't want to say anything to her. One quick story. Now, that's okay, because it actually shows how important it is. When I meet with you as a candidate, we've met today. That's one contact. I finally got in front of you. So how am I going to do my follow-up? First of all, you always get their business card so you don't spell their name wrong, and you know what their title is. Okay? Always request one. And by the way, we'll talk about cards in a second. You send them an email that evening. You thank them for their time and courtesy and express your interest in the position. That's that night. So that's the next morning they come in. So within 24 hours, you've had 2 contacts. That same night, you write a handwritten thank you card. I didn't bring them with me tonight. I apologize. Successories has great ones. Great pictures, little quotes on the bottom. I have like 30 different variations, and I handwrite thank yous out to people. So 3 days later, they're going to get a thank you from you, which differentiate yourself. That's the way you do it. Then Kelly brought up a great point. She said that there were pictures of sailing in her office. When you go on an interview, you pick something out in that person's office which you can identify that is important to them. Try to get them to talk about it. And then a week later, you do research to find out that there's a regatta in Long Island Sound, and you get back to Kelly and you tell her, guess what? I was doing some research and I saw that there's a regatta. I didn't know if you knew about it, but I wanted to let you know. You didn't call back, ask, am I going to get the job, or when am I going to hear from you again? She knows that you focused on what was really important to her. It gives you a 4th contact in less than a week. That's the way you stand out. Does it work? When my son graduated from Marist, and for those of you that have been to my presentations before, I apologize for duplicating. He went for a position with 4 other people. They were all more experienced than he was, all of them. He interviewed, Dad, what can I do to stand out? I said, make sure you send handwritten thank yous. So he got to this 3rd round. He sent handwritten thank yous to all the executives. One of them was a regional vice president. And my son not only got that job, but they brought him in at a higher level. And when he met the guy afterwards, he asked him, why did I get the job? I wasn't the most qualified, and you told me that. He goes, for a couple of reasons. Your follow-ups were stellar. Your writing skills were excellent. But the handwritten card was the first one I've gotten from a recent grad in 7 years. You want to differentiate? That's how you differentiate. He got the job. True story. My time is getting close, so I'm going to wrap up quickly. Your preparation is extremely, extremely important. But before you decide which avenue you want to go down, find out what your passion is. If you're a tax accounting person, maybe you love sports. So maybe you want to get into a Big 4 firm and see if you can specialize in the sports industry. Find out what you really want to do with your life. Everybody has a passion. There's a person that interviewed with me today, sitting in this room, and I asked her that question. What is your passion? If you can take what you've learned here and move it into a field that you're passionate about, you're going to be a heck of a lot better and you're going to be a heck of a lot happier. Mary started the conversation off tonight with positive attitude. It is absolutely required constantly when you start a search. Nobody wants to deal with somebody who's moping. And the only way you're going to stand out from everybody else is if you are perceived as a take-charge person that can get things done. I've hired a lot of people in my career. I worked at a Fortune 200 company. The guy who took my position when I left had no experience in our field. But I hired him because of his personality, and then I mentored and groomed him and trained him. And when I left, he took over my job and got promoted over about 5 or 6 other people in his department that had a heck of a lot more experience than he did. So as I said to some people today, resumes are great. They don't get you in the door, and that's a key. You get in by being proactive, being positive, being dressed properly, and when you get into position to really stand out. 4 or 5 more last tips. Disassociate yourself with negative people. If you have somebody who's negative in your life right now, get rid of them. Drop them like a hot potato. You can laugh, you have to do it. When I first got into executive recruiting, my mentor said, get rid of negative people. And I was reading a book at the same time, and it said, get rid of negative people. 3 people I had been friends for a long time, I got rid of. Boom. Is it hard? Yeah. Quite honestly, quite frankly, excuse my language, it sucks. But you know what? Getting rid of that negative influence in my life helped me propel myself forward because I started associating with just positive people. And it's amazing. There's an upward spiral. And Mary and I have had conversations like this. It's like you're getting a draft like a hawk, and you just get sucked up, and it's fantastic. But if you got negative people pulling you down, it works just as fast the other way. Have a great elevator speech. Go online, put in elevator speech. It'll show you how to put it together. Practice it and have it down. Have your own business card. Right, Katie? Every senior should have a business card. Every junior should have a business card because you never know who you're going to be sitting next to on a plane that they won't remember you if you don't give them a business card. And I like to end up with one thing. Do me a favor. Would you stand up, please? What's your name? Mike. Hi, Mike. When you meet somebody for the first time, you want to get their attention, this is the way you do it. Mike, hi. My name is Steve Harvey. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great. See, he was nervous. He didn't know what I was going to do. But there was quite a few things that went on there, okay? First of all, good handshake, which is important. I handed him something. I handed him my business card. Japanese culture says if you give somebody something when you first meet them, the odds are they're going to like you more. And I like everybody to like me. So that's not the reason why you do it, but it's proper etiquette. Now, the other thing that I did is I can tell you what color Mike's eyes are. That's the way you get focused with somebody. You connect with them. And if you noticed, I said, hi, Mike, how are you? It reinforces in your brain who the person is that you're talking to. Extremely important. So every time, and by the way, you can't do the X opening if you don't have a business card. So make sure you get a business card. To wrap up with, put together a weekly plan, and on Friday, write down your accomplishments so you don't get frustrated all the time. Yeah, Katie?
With the business card thing, when you're in an interview situation and you shake someone's hand like that, but they've already seen your resume and stuff like that, do you still give them a business card right then and there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
These are I have a bunch of them on me, but you know, you're always like, whoops, I don't want to get killed this morning. You're always giving them out to everybody you meet. Now, we were tied up today. Normally, I would have been at the door saying hello to everybody and giving them my business card. What did I say before? 90% of you are going to get your job through networking. The more cards you give out, the better opportunities you're going to have to expand your network, and that's what you really want to do.
Steve, can I just say something? I've actually had a negative experience with that, and I picked it up from somebody who I wanted to, who taught me this. And he said, and this was his impression, he was honest about it, I wanted to connect with him. He was the president of a company. And for him, it worked better to receive that, it's been great talking to you, here's my information. That was a way to reinforce it. He didn't want to get the business card because he felt that was like slick networking. Here I am shaking your hands, I'm just working the deal. So I'm not saying that that's wrong, I'm just showing you that that's a lesson that I had picked up along the way. So from a point of view.
I am not God. And that's a very good example because I'm sure there's a lot of situations where it is inappropriate, or you come across overbearing, or whatever it might be.
So he wants what he said, he wants the business card. It's just that, just not in my face when I first get there. I want to judge who you are, and then if I've already mentioned, I get the card, you know it's going in my pocket.
The other thing too, when you get a business card, use it. We talked to one young man who went to an association meeting. Remember I talked about association meetings? I said, so what'd you get out of it? I got 50 business cards. 50. Really? What'd you do with it? How many interviews did you get out of it? Nothing. Why? Because he didn't do anything with them. You get 50 business cards, you did a good job. Take the 50 business cards, utilize that, get out and network with those people. Because if you met them, first of all, if you shook their hand and you looked them in the eye, especially if you're at a conference, which is what most people are doing is networking, they're going to probably remember you if you get back to them in a short period of time, which is what you want to do, which is get in front of them. The last thing, on a positive note, because I've thrown a lot of stuff that might be frustrating for you, companies are hiring good people. You stand out, you want to differentiate, you did tonight by coming here. Special people take the time to improve themselves. Hopefully we've shared enough information with you that that's going to happen. We thank you very much. Now, Mary is going to wrap up, and as she's doing so, I'm going to be passing out evaluation forms. I really would appreciate it if you would be honest and fill them out. Mary?
Thank you, Steve, very much. Yeah, I was thinking again as Steve was talking, I was thinking, okay, we want all of us involved with this event tonight. We want all of you students to become so darn successful that you can't stand it. We want you to be so successful that you are giving your family members, your professors, your friends goosebumps because you are reaching the aspirations that you have achieved, that you're trying to reach, that you have done it. We started with a positive attitude. We interlaced etiquette, fashion, a whole lot of job tips. I'm going to bring it back to the positive attitude because it really is the entire picture. If you start thinking positively about yourself, thinking positively about the situation, whether it's a job interview, whether it's a business networking event, you are going to have positive outcomes. If you incorporate all the tips that you learned today, you are going to nail it, and that's what this is all about. Any final questions, any comments from our alums? I do want to thank all of our alums for coming tonight. Laura and Ray, Mike and James, thank you all for being here. We're really These are the folks who, at one point in time, were in the exact same position that you're in this very school and have made it. Steve was talking earlier about mentors. Make sure you take advantage of having met them tonight. It's a missed opportunity if you don't. So again, thank you all for being here. Any other questions on etiquette, on fashion, on job search tips?
You'll be hanging around afterwards for them to
Yes,
ask questions,
yes.
right?
And just to give our websites one more time, Kelly's website is One Place Etiquette.
One Etiquette Place.
Thank you very much. OneEtiquettePlace.com. Please do write that down. Debbie Wright's website is ProjectCloset.com. Steve's is JobTutors.net. My website is MaryJonesShow.com. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. This has been wonderful. I hope you got a lot out of it. I'm just going to close tonight as I close my radio show every day. 3 words that mean a lot to me that if you incorporate in terms of the positive attitude can make all the difference in your life. Trust me, and that is please believe in yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you in as well, because there are so many people involved in making tonight awesome. I've been doing this for a long time, and I learned things tonight that I didn't know. First, I want to thank all of our wonderful presenters. You guys were wonderful. You were here out of the goodness of your heart to help educate us and make us better people in the business world, so thank you tremendously. I'd like to thank my staff back there. I have my 3 student hosts, Danny, Andrea, and Casey, as well as my colleague Anne Marie Noel, who took the lion's share of organizing everything today. I would like to thank Belinda Formica, because she has been a champion in helping us connect with our alumni, which is terrific. Thank you so much. And our alumni for being here. Thank you. And lastly, I want to thank the students for being here, because without you guys, this wouldn't have been an event.